Today we are breaking down something that confuses many Raspberry Pi users. Which Raspberry Pi OS to be downloaded? So when you open the Raspberry Pi imager, you see options like 64-bit, 32-bit and the legacy version of Raspberry Pi as well as the Raspberry Pi desktop. And it's easy to feel lost in that environment. So in this video, I will clearly explain what each version means to you, who is it for, and which one should you use. So let's get started. Raspberry Pi OS 64-bit. This is the main recommended and modern version of Raspberry Pi OS. It runs on 64-bit architecture, that is ARM 64. The supported hardwares in it are Raspberry Pi 3, Raspberry Pi 4, 400, 5 and the newer version. So why choose it? Well, it is for better overall performance. You can run modern 64-bit applications, supports more than 4 GB RAM properly, recommended for most users in 2024-25 and later on. So if you have Raspberry Pi 3 or newer, this is the version you should usually install. The next is Raspberry Pi OS 32-bit. It is the official OS built for 32-bit ARM processor, still supported and useful for older hardwares. It is best for Raspberry Pi 0, 0W, Pi 1 and Pi 2. So why choose it? Well, the maximum compatibility with older boards, slightly lower RAM usage, some legacy software works best in 32-bit. Now choose this version for Pi 0 or very old Pis, or if you need maximum compatibility. The next is Raspberry Pi OS, the legacy version for 64-bit. Older 64-bit release typically based on Debian 11 Bullseye, kept for compatibility with older drivers and packages. Why it exists? Users who rely on older drivers or software behavior and smooth compatibility during upgrades. It is not recommended for new installation unless you need the legacy behavior. The fourth one is Raspberry Pi OS Legacy 32-bit. It's meant for older 32-bit releases, also typically based on Debian 11, used for stability and unchanged behavior. It is best for critical systems that must not change their behavior and software not updated for the current OS. It is great for long-term installation in schools or industrial setups where updates might break functionalities. The final is the Raspberry Pi Desktop. Raspberry Pi Desktop is designed for x86 PCs and virtual machines, and it is not for Raspberry Pi hardware. It runs on x86 PCs and laptops and on the virtual machines. It is useful for people who want the Raspberry Pi Desktop environment on their regular computer for teaching, testing, or learning without a Pi board. Here is the summary table for all the comparisons of Raspberry Pi OS versions. And which one should you use? Well, if you have Raspberry Pi 3, 4, 5 or 400, go for the Raspberry Pi OS 64-bit. If you have Pi 0 or older boards, choose the 32-bit. If you rely on old software, use the legacy versions. And if you want the Pi experience on a PC, then use the Raspberry Pi Desktop. I hope this clears up the confusion. If you found this video helpful, hit like, subscribe and drop a comment telling me which Raspberry Pi model you are using, and if you want, tell me your project and I will recommend the best OS for you to use in your use case.